would like to welcome everyone to the Toastmaster meeting of 9523 TV Toastmasters. We will have a great meeting today. We're going to have a lot of fun. Our first order of the business is the word of the day, all-counter grammarian, who provides a word and challenges us to increase our vocabulary by using this word. And you're going to have fun today because the words of the day are metaphor and simile. You don't use the words, but you use the comparison that they are. And the difference between, and I have it up here, the rhetorical devices or figures of speech. The difference between a simile and a metaphor is that a simile is a comparison using the words like or as. For example, the surface of the water looked as smooth as glass. If we deny our children an education, ignorance will grow like a cancer. So you are using a simile when you say like or as, whereas a metaphor is when you're saying the thing is something else. For example, the clouds are cotton balls in the sky. Ignorance is a cancer that must be cured. And that is the difference, and it will be up to me to determine if you're using a metaphor or a simile. With that, I will call our... Yes. With that, our next order of business is the table topics. Table topics is where we put you on the spot, but not uncomfortably. This is to help you learn that your brain does not freeze when someone asks you an unexpected question, not of your choosing. And that's what we do in table topics, and you have from 1 to 2 minutes to answer the question. And Michelle Lewis, is who is an advanced communicator bronze and advanced leader bronze, will be our table topics master today. And welcome. I haven't seen you for a while.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Fellow Toastmasters and those looking in from home. As Carol mentioned, table topics is the opportunity to practice those in the hot seat questions that we all get when we're in front of our boss or at home or in any type of situation. Today we're going to do a little bit of a unique twist on the normal way we do table topics. I'm going to give you a simple situation to speak about. Your day at the beach is an example. As you're speaking, I'm going to yell out some single irrelevant words that you then need to incorporate into your speech, your mini speech. Probably be about 6 or 7 words throughout your speech. And so, for example, if the topic is your day at the beach, you might say, I'm walking along the sand and admiring the blue sky, and I might yell out the word tiger. And you must include this in your topic. And you could say, I met someone who thought I looked great in my tiger-colored bathing suit. This is going to be a fun one. So let's get started. Let's get started. Your day at the zoo. I'm going to ask Veronica to come up and speak about her day at the zoo. Veronica Sanford.
Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master. I went to the zoo the other day, and I bought some peanuts in order to feed to the elephants.
Spaceship.
I bought also at the gift shop a spaceship for my nephew. He's actually 26 years old, but he loves spaceships. At the same time, I bought some candles and some cookies, gifts, and a mountain in one of those snow globes for my sister because she loves the Alps and she loves snowboarding.
Hospital.
I did see that somebody had run into, slipped on the water that was over there by the penguins and had to be taken to the hospital. And that was really quite sad. It was an elderly woman and she was running. She was running and, chasing after her grandchildren who happened to be on roller skates. Excuse me. They happened to be on roller skates. And so that was really quite cha-cha. The grandmother had a stapler in trouser pocket when she slipped and fell. It really gave her quite a bruise, which she actually showed everybody. It was, luckily that was not on camera. Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Veronica, for being the brave one. I forgot to mention this little exercise is a great opportunity to practice your metaphors and your similes. So think about that as you come up here next. Thanksgiving dinner at my house. That's the topic. Do I have a volunteer or should I select someone? Carol, you were not making eye contact, so therefore, come talk about Thanksgiving at my house.
Thanksgiving at my house is a wonderful time. It's a family time. You're not allowed to watch the TV because if you do, a bee might come and sting you because you have to turn off the TV and the guests are upset that they don't get to watch the game. But my favorite color is purple, and I have purple candles on the table with my pink china, and it makes a very attractive table. And while we're in, it's a family time, so we're talking, we're getting to know each other. I'm waiting for the next word.
Scooter.
A scooter. Well, I have little great-grandbabies, twins. They're now a year and 3 months.
Giraffe.
And I gave them a giraffe this tall for one of their Christmas gifts, and also a big lion that was this tall, and they ride it like a horse.
Microwave.
And I don't put anything in the microwave. I don't nuke anything. I don't kill the food before I serve it. So my microwave does not get used.
Italy.
Well, one of my sons did a youth hostel over in Italy, and he got to see a lot of scenery over in Europe, and Italy was one of the places that he went. And that's my table topic for today.
Sorry, I lost a little bit of control there. All right, I think we have time for one more. Let's talk about walking through the park. Phil, let's talk about walking through the park.
Madam Table Topics Master, fellow Toastmasters, I like walking in the park. I actually like walking or running in the park.
Television.
I find it a nice diversion from sitting around watching television, which I also enjoy doing, but doing them at the same time would not work out. The last time I went to the park,
Rug.
there was this guy walking beside me. He had an obvious rug. I didn't make fun of it. I didn't want to do that. I just thought it wouldn't be nice. But I felt like it made an interesting. Cereal?
Cereal, yeah.
Before I walk, I need to have a good meal. Frosted mini wheats are my favorite. There's no sodium in frosted mini wheats. They're just like almost like a health food. In fact, they are a health food. Let's just say they're like a health food, and they are health food.
Earring.
Except for the sugar. Which, if you eat too much of it, you might do crazy things, and I've never done, but you could put earrings on before you walk in the park. They don't look good on me. And
Alaska.
and frankly, I like walking here. I've never been to Alaska. Someday I might, but I don't know that I'd want to walk in the park, especially if it were in the winter in Alaska. It could be cold and mostly dark. So if you're in Alaska and watching this right now, might I suggest if it's too dark and cold to walk in the park, just go watch television and lay down with your head on a pillow.
Thank you, Phil. And this concludes our table topics for the day. Madam Toastmaster.
That was like, yes, that was great. Let's see what it could have been like. It was something like watching cartoon characters change their character each time. Sort of like that. We now go to the next part of our program, which is our first speaker of the day. And Susan Whitrock is doing a speech from the Competent Communication number 3. Her title is, number 3 is Get to the Point. And she has 5 to 7 minutes to tell us about an Austrian, I have an Austrian here, and 7 years in Tibet. Susan Whitrock.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Fellow Toastmasters, guests, my story I picked is the inspirational story part, and I titled it An Austrian and 7 years in Tibet. I hope that this story will inspire you, and when I'm finished with it, that you will have a sense of understanding how you can have a goal, and no matter how long it takes, you can get to it. You can achieve this goal. So I had tears in my eyes as I was watching the movie screen, and I saw a young Dalai Lama trying to befriend an Austrian mountain climber who happened to spend some years in the forbidden city of Lhasa. This is from a movie called The 7 Years in Tibet. Who here has seen The 7 Years in Tibet? Big movie star Brad Pitt played the Austrian. It is a true story. And there was this Austrian, Heinrich Harrer, and he went to climb the Mount Everest. As he was doing this, World War II just started, and when he came down, he was taken prison by British officers because Austrians, Germans at that time were, of course, enemies. He escaped the prison. Long story short, he ended up in the forbidden city of Lhasa. While he was there, the Dalai Lama, who was he was maybe 13 at this time, wanted to know everything he could learn from a Westerner, anything that had to do with the Western world. When he heard there were some foreigners in the city, he invited him and his friend, and Heinrich Harrer became a very close friend of the Dalai Lama, and this relationship lasted all his lifetime. This movie was so inspiring to me, and I was just totally excited when I saw this. First of all, an Austrian. Well, here I am an Austrian, not an Australian. No kangaroos there. So, Anyway, I just really loved this movie very much. And at the same time when this movie came out, I actually happened to see the Dalai Lama give a speech in Indiana at the Indiana University. So this was like double excitement for me. And I was like, one day I have to go and I have to meet Heinrich Harrer. I just want to see him, and I want to talk to this guy who was such a close friend to the Dalai Lama. A few years later, my sister, who lives in Austria, of course, she sent me a magazine, and there was a great big article in there about Heinrich Harrer and his hometown, which is called Hüttenberg. And there is a huge museum that they dedicated to him that is filled with all kinds of memorabilia, most of it, of course, from Tibet. And I was like, I need to go there. One day I will go there and see this place. It was just an absolute goal of mine. When I took my son to Austria about 2 years ago, my sister actually gifted us with a trip anywhere we wanted to go in Austria. Guess what was on my top list? Of course, we went to Hüttenberg. So when we got there, I was like, unfortunately, I have to say, Heinrich Harrer had already passed away at this time. So I knew I could not meet him. But I was so excited when I was there. It was like Christmas, birthday, and the last day of school all together. I just couldn't contain my excitement about this. And so we walked through the museum, and seeing the original letters that he had written when he was there in Lhasa and mailed them back to his family, and just all this different memorabilia, it was just, I was just in seven heaven. So after we went through the museum, we went for lunch, and I picked this little tiny Gasthaus, which is a little restaurant. The lady that owned this place happened to be actually a person that knew Heinrich Harrer, because he used to come there all the time for lunch with his wife. So she sat down with us and she was telling us stories, and it was just, oh my gosh, like extra bonus, right? So, but the best thing was still coming. I knew that there was something called a Lingkor, which is a Tibetan sacred path that they had put right across from the museum. There's a huge mountain, and they put it into the mountain. And I was like, I have to walk the sacred path. So when we went over there, you had to get a helmet because you have to climb. And one thing you have to know about me is I am afraid of heights. I cannot climb up there and change the light bulbs without freaking out. So, but I didn't care. I needed to walk this path. And so when you go up there, you actually walk on metal, on steel ladders and on graded steel walkways, which means, you know, they're like this, and you can see through them down below, right? Well, so I'm walking up there, and I made the mistake of looking down, and I froze. And we were about 10 stories high at this time. And I still remember I was just standing there freezing, and I was remembering now, I'm still I'm shaking again. I was holding on so tight to the railing, my knuckles were showing, and my hands actually hurt the rest of the day. And I was just standing there, and I was like, what am I doing? I am insane. I'm halfway up this pathway, and I can't walk anymore. And then I realized, wait a second, this is where the Dalai Lama walked, where Heinrich Harrer walked with him. And I can do this. I can do this. So I started saying out loud in English, one mind, not in German, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. My sister turned around, looking at me, you know, saying in German, are you okay? And I'm like, do not talk to me. Don't touch me. Leave me alone. I'm freaking out right now. I can do this. I can do this. And so I kept, every time I stepped a step, I would say, I can do this. So we just kept walking on, and I just kept repeating. I felt sorry for my son that he would see me in such a state. And so I asked him, I said, Alexander, are you okay? Are you doing okay? And he was like, Mama, this is great. I'm having a great time. So I was so relieved I didn't have to worry about him, just about myself. So we walked across what happened to be a swinging bridge. And my fear was off the chart. My brother-in-law walked behind me, and he was like, I can hold on to you and we can walk together. And I'm like, no, I'm holding on to you and we're walking together. I can do this. I can do this. And as we were halfway across the bridge, my lovely child was already on the other side, and he decided it would be fun to jump up and down on this bridge. So he did. And I don't remember what I said, but I know I was not happy. And but we made it across. We made it back down. When I had solid ground under my feet, I was so relieved. I had such overwhelming feeling of accomplishment. I was like flying high, and I was just, moving those prayer wheels, and it was just the greatest accomplishment. So I just wanted to tell anybody in here, if you ever have a goal and you're really scared of it and you just don't know how to get there, just find something that is bigger than your fear and just do it anyway. Because I know you can do it. Thank you.
Thank you for that great speech there. It was very refreshing. It was like a breath of fresh air out there in that wilderness. And I did that with hang gliding. I didn't mind when I ran off of the ground to the air, but coming off the platform, I'm going, you're going to have to push me off. And they said, just fall forward. And it took me a long time, so I could relate. I was feeling sorry for you, and then your son jumping up and down on the bridge. I would have beat him up, I think. We will have 1 minute of silence for the evaluator. Welcome back, And we now come to our speaker number 2. Sean Gallagher is an Advanced Communicator Silver and Advanced Leader Bronze. He is completing his Competent Communication Manual with number 10, Inspire Your Audience in 8 to 10 minutes. And he is going to tell us about 6 powerful words. Sean Gallagher, 6 powerful words.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Six powerful words. Take these in. Go home and love your neighbor. Who said those? Who said those words? Agnes Bernay. How many of us here have heard of Agnes Bernay?
But I don't remember.
How many of us here have heard of Mother Teresa? Thank you very much. We'll get to that part of the story a little bit later.
Are they ones?
We'll get to that part of the story a little bit later. Thank you very much. Mother Teresa was born in Albania in August of 1910 to Nikolai and Derma Bernay. She was the second of 2 daughters. And of course she wasn't born Mother Teresa. Carol, she was born as Agnes Bernay. Tragically, in 1919, her father died very suddenly. So at that point, moving through life, she became much closer to her mother. Madam Toastmaster, as I go through this story, I'm going to cover it in 3 different areas. And fellow Toastmasters. One is her early years, which did begin with her birth. Second will be her works and service for others, and finally her message. So to continue on with her birth and her early years, as she was growing up, her mother, of course being a single mom in the 1920s raising 2 kids, was not in any way wealthy. In fact, she struggled for money. But she continued to invite homeless and poor people to eat meals with her and her family. And her big push was to instill charitable works in her 2 daughters, to get that spirit in her family. She said to her daughters, in fact, you should not enjoy even one mouthful of food if you're not sharing that meal with somebody else. Agnes had asked her mom through those years, who are these visitors? Who are the people that are coming into our house? And her mother responded, some of them are our relations, but all are our people. Does that mean those are our family? Does that mean that community is now those we take care of? Think about the message at a young time that Agnes Bernay, Mother Teresa, got at that point, and how that instilled the rest of her life. At the age of 12, she committed to a life of religious servitude, and that continued through her teenage years. In fact, until the point in 1928, when she was 18, she left home for good. She left her mother and sister behind, and she went to Ireland to work with the Sisters of Loreto with 2 goals in mind. I want to learn the English language, which was the international language of missionaries, and I want to become a missionary. From Ireland, she moved to India, and she went to Calcutta. She went to Calcutta and started teaching there in a public school. And immediately she became painfully aware of the poverty and the poor living conditions that surrounded Calcutta. So her next step was to actually take Indian citizenship, which she got within the next couple months, and she spent time gaining basic medical training. From that point, she stepped off into the slums surrounding Calcutta. She then took her religious vows and became a sister, a Catholic nun, and took the name Teresa, as we all know. So she was at that point Sister Teresa. She took it because of the patron saint of missionaries, Teresa de Lasso. She was not Mother Teresa at that point. She wasn't what we all know today and what became world renowned and a big following. She was Sister Teresa, and she had to get supplies and food to serve the people that she was working with. She sat on the streets begging. To get the supplies and food that she needed, she begged for them. This was one of many steps of self-sacrifice and service to other people that really formed her life. But as an adult later in years, she looked back to that moment and she recalled and spoke to people about the loneliness, the discouragement. She actually thought to herself she was tempted to move back to the comforts of convent life. Comforts of convent life, you look at our lifestyle and think of that. But that's what she looked toward as something that could save her from this, but of course she didn't step through. What were some of the actual works and services she performed through her life? There's no way in 8 to 10 minutes I can give you her magnitude of her life and how many people she touched and what she did. But I did pick a few points and high points that I'd like to share with you when I did my research. One of the things she did in 1950 is she founded the Missionaries of Charity, which was a Catholic congregation, Roman Catholic congregation, and just started it on her own. In 2012, that organization grew to 4,500 sister members and was active in 133 countries across the world. She also opened a hospice for the poor and the homeless. She wanted to give them a different lifestyle, those that were at the end of their lives. So she brought them in, offered them food and comfort, love and care, a warm bed, medical attention as they needed it, so they could actually die those last couple of days of their lives with dignity, as opposed to dying on the streets of India and Calcutta. In 1979, I think the highlight that I took from this, the courage she had. Imagine at that point, she was truly a middle-aged or maybe advanced age, withered woman of Catholic beginnings. She took upon herself to meet with the Israeli army and the Palestinian guerrillas during the siege of Beirut, the height of the siege of Beirut. And she brokered a ceasefire for as long as she could, so she could walk through the battle lines with a couple Red Cross workers, go to a hospital that was completely in the fire, and they rescued and evacuated dozens of young patients to get them out of line of fire. This to me, I don't know that I, in my lifestyle, would ever consider doing something like that. The courage that would take, the goal that would take, that is one of the highlights that I love the most that I found about Mother Teresa. In 1979, she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, which many of you probably know. They started setting up the ceremony, and they started planning for the ceremony, and she turned to the people and said, "Can we forego it?" Watching those lights progress was like watching my life flash through my own eyes. I digress. So she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, and she asked them to forego the ceremony and take the $192,000 value at that time, 1979, and donate 100% of it to the poor of India. So, her life of servitude and the work she had done, she was actually interviewed at that point. She was handed the Nobel Prize, as she should deserve it, and they'd asked her, what can any of us do to promote world peace? And she delivered some information, but it's summed up in those 6 powerful words. Go home and love your family. What was Mother Teresa's message? Go home and love your family. Treat others as your family. Love your fellow man. Take from those words what you will as inspiration. What if each of us in this room We've got 7 adults here today. What if each of us used a little bit of that in our daily lives? Love your neighbor. Love that person in the car next to you that just cut you off. Love your coworkers. Love a stranger. Show more forgiveness and compassion, more understanding toward your fellow man. Could this really, maybe, reduce what we consider hate crimes or prejudice that we see day after day after day? I'll leave you with this thought and this inspiration I ask for you. Could those 6 powerful words, enacted in some way by each of us, really change the world that we live in? Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you for a great speech, and I do have one question. I heard at first you said go home, and I wrote love your neighbor, and then at the end you said go home and love your family.
It should be go home and love your family.
Go
and
home
I
and
don't
love-
know what I said in the beginning because I was concentrating on the green light that didn't show up. I'm just kidding.
Thank you very much.
Should have showed up.
So
Thank
go
you.
home and love your friend. Thank you very much, and I know how difficult that is because I tried to do Betsy Ross, being her in person and trying to remember everything, and speaking in first person was very difficult. So I admire that you were able to cover so much. 1 minute of silence. We now come to our third speech of the day, and this is Phil Barth. Phil Barth is practicing for his international speech contest. He is giving a non-manual speech. It's a contest speech, and his title is Why? Phil Barth, why?
So, anyone? Tom Cruise? Madam Toastmaster? Fellow Toastmasters? Guests? Okay, maybe not. But I do like these prescription Ray-Ban sunglasses. They fit so well. In fact, there's just enough room between the lens and my eye to fit one adult wasp. Ask me how I know. I found out this important fact on a warm morning in July. I'm packing the van for a family trip to Mammoth Cave. Now, normally when I pack the van, I like to see the van out of both eyes. But at some point during the packing, my left eye became completely blocked by a wasp. I don't know how he managed to fit his body up in there, but I do know this. If you ever find yourself eye to eye with a wasp, the last thing you want to do is squeeze your eyes shut really, really tight. That's unfortunate, because if you find yourself in that situation, the first thing you're going to do is squeeze your eyes shut really, really tight. Even the most calm person in the world will at least blink. And if you even blink, that wasp is going to turn your eye pink. And that might just make your vocabulary shrink. My vocabulary shrunk to 20 words. 5 of them were dirty. I bent over, my glasses fell down, I said, why? Oh, son of a... 1. That little... 2. Stung me. Oh! 3, 4, 3, 4, 3. My kids are standing off to the side. My oldest son said, uh-oh, Dad's going to say 5. Well, I did not disappoint him. Well, let me explain. At this point, my left eye swollen shut. I'm talking all the number words. Basically, I'm a shoulder parrot short of being a pirate. I'm like a pirate. And in the midst of all that, I stepped forward and landed right on my prescription sunglasses. Oh, my Ray-Bans! Do you realize those things cost me $195? It's been said that time and ice packs heal all wounds. You wouldn't have known it to see me driving to Kentucky. Stupid wasp! Broke my Ray-Bans! About halfway down, my wife said, "Hey, how about we stop at Dairy Queen?" I don't think a blizzard's going to take care of this. A chocolate chip cookie dough blizzard? And it turns out that time, ice packs, and chocolate chip cookie dough blizzards heal all wounds. My wife is brilliant. We got back into the van. I turned on the car, I backed it up and landed right in a Honda Accord. I heard that crunch. I said, $500 deductible down the drain. What do you do when life keeps stinging you? You ever feel like just turning that van around and going home? Or maybe you shrink your vocabulary even more. My vocabulary shrunk to 9 words. 9 of them were dirty. Oh, you'd have thought I was reciting pi to 1,000 decimal places. Oh, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 9, 5, 3, 5. In the midst of my rant, I looked in the rearview mirror and I saw my sons' faces. My youngest son, my middle son, my oldest son. And I decided I needed to do something smart. Shut up. And that allowed my wife to say one word. Why? Now, she didn't mean, why are you teaching our kids new vocabulary words? No, she meant, why are we on this journey? You see, in life, you're going to be on many journeys. Some of them may be a lifelong quest. Some of them may be just a simple family trip to Mammoth Cave. But on any of those journeys, you can get stung. Repeatedly. And when that happens, you might get mad, you might get angry, but you won't quit if you simply remember why you're on that journey. Our trip in the cave took us through some very crowded places. It was cold, it was wet, and eventually we got to a room called Grand Central Station. Grand Central Station is 250 feet underground. 6 different caves converge into that room. It's enormous. There's enough room in Grand Central Station to fit 2 football fields. Think of that. The Bengals and Browns could go there and lose simultaneously. When I got in the room, I turned around and looked at my sons, and I saw my youngest son, my middle son, even my oldest son. Later that night, when we went to bed, my youngest son came up to me and he said, "Dad, this day was awesome." And then he gave me a hug. He said, "I love you, Daddy." It brought a tear to my eye, my good eye. And in that moment, I realized I had found my why. That trip to Mammoth Cave made memories that will last a lifetime. And any time you find your why, well, that day just winds up being the best number of all, a perfect 10.
Thank you for that great speech. We'll have a minute of silence while you make some comments that you can give to Phil. Anything that you might have not understood as clearly as he intended it to be. We now turn control of our meeting over to the general evaluator. The best portion of Toastmasters is getting the feedback on what you did well, what you could do better, and what your strengths are. And I'm happy to welcome Michelle Lewis, Advanced Communicator Bronze, Advanced Leader Bronze.
Thank you,
Michelle Lewis.
Toastmaster. This is the very fun part of the meeting because we get to hear feedback and ways that we can improve our presentation skills and our speaking skills. So I have a whole team that's going to help me do the evaluation portion of our meeting today. So we have Sean, who is the evaluator for Suzanne. Phil, who is the evaluator for Sean. We'll do a round robin evaluation for Phil. We have the timer, who is Veronica, and then Carol is the grammarian. So we'll hear from each of those folks here today. I'd like to start out, and I'd like to ask Sean to come forward and give an evaluation for Suzanne.
Madam General Evaluator. Suzanne, one of the interesting and cool parts of your speech is you went on a journey and you took us with you. A journey through, I would say it was a quest, because there was a lot of things you were trying to achieve. And I'm assuming it's because of the movie you had watched and the connection between Tibet and your Austrian heritage. So that was very interesting, and I felt like we were along the journey because you gave some pretty interesting facts, and you actually gave good descriptors as well. One of the things I wasn't sure about, I didn't catch it, maybe it's my ears, forbidden city of something within Tibet. I didn't hear clearly what the city was. So for future speeches, just keep in mind, especially if it's a word that's not, might be a little more foreign to most of us. Maybe slow it down and enunciate it. You had a very good use of facial expression, your smiles, your fear. There was even a moment of questioning craziness, I would say. That really helped to accentuate your speech. And what it's doing is showing us, if we think about the speeches you've given, this is probably number 3 or 4 in front of our club, your personality is starting to emerge. We're starting to see who Suzanne is by the way you present yourself, not just the words you give, but how you present them, and especially your facial and body language. So keep that in mind, because that really draws the audience into knowing you and becoming more personally connected. A couple of things I think maybe could have been done differently, because you did start out almost giving a pre-introduction, and you spoke something about you want to give inspiration, but then you gave the words right after that, and I'll write down what I thought. I quoted, "Hope that this story will inspire you." So you said you were going to try to give an inspirational speech, and then you used the word in your speech. You could have really gotten rid of that beginning introduction, because we already heard that you're trying to inspire us by saying that within the speech. So keep that in mind. You did say something about a tear in your eye, I think, when you watched the movie. I don't know why. I might have missed it in the speech, but I was waiting for a culmination of that somewhere along the speech. That, what was that tear in the eye, and how did it become finalized or achieved or eradicated, whatever it was that happened. I didn't get it completed, so I was left waiting and wondering. Yeah. You had good inspiration, because some of the things you talked about is, I can do this, but then you turned it around to the audience, because you gave us some advice about making sure that your dream or your vision is bigger than your fear, and then actually telling the audience, you can do this. So that was a really good ending with that inspiration. Minimal use of notes. We're allowed to use notes anytime we want. We're trying to get it to diminish as we go on. For speech number 3, I did see you looking at a page maybe a couple times. It wasn't distracting. And the humor, because I think Carol, either intentionally or not, talked about Australia, you made sure to say Austria, not Australia, and we have no kangaroos there. And the way you presented that was very humorous and funny. I really enjoyed that. I think that's all I really need to give you. For speech number 3, you're really moving along. I think you're developing well. Good luck on speech number 4. We look forward to it. Madam General Evaluator.
Thank you, Sean. Always such a great evaluator. And I believe you competed in the evaluation contest, or did you?
I did at division level, albeit district, on Sunday the 20th.
All right. Well, we wish you well, and we know you'll do awesome.
Thank you.
I'd now like to invite our second evaluator, Bill Barth, to evaluate Sean Gallagher's speech, which is 6 powerful words.
You're not going to shout out words that I need to incorporate in the middle of the evaluation.
Please do.
Sean, you're a tiger, just in case that's coming. I enjoyed this is the second time I've heard the speech, Sean, and I enjoyed it. I think you've made a lot of progress because the first thing I know about this speech is there is a lot of facts, and you nailed them all pretty much. I think there was one point where you mentioned Teresa de la Sue, I think, and you almost had a look on your face like a surprise. Yeah, I remember that name. I nailed it. I kind of caught that, but an immense number of facts in this speech, and you had them this time. I think you might have looked for one, but very impressive performance there. I like your use of stories. You used everything, every type of trick you could to inspire the audience. There was stories, there was facts, there was numbers. You know, she turned down $192,000. There were quotes, and there were some very powerful words like slums, where that helps us build a mental picture of what we're talking about. Slums in India especially, really good there. Couple of things I found, this is really nitpicky, but you said she was the second of two daughters, and you had one finger up. So, just I had to find something. So that would actually be two, yes. The only other thing I have for improvement is, and this is a suggestion, there was so much breadth of material, you could almost take some of those stories and just go deeper on them. The story of the hospice is very powerful. The story of being in Indian slums would be very powerful, and I don't think I haven't been to India, and I don't think we get a real grasp for just how bad that is. But part of it was so bad that she longed to return to a convent. And you brought that out, and I thought that was a good thing. So that's a possibility for the speech, is take it down deeper. Last thing I really liked was the call to action at the end, because it's nice to tell us a story about Mother Teresa, but hey, what does it mean? And you gave us a call to action and how to use those words. I also liked, and Carol, I'm glad you caught this, go home and love your family instead of neighbor. I like that because there was also that kind of moment early in her childhood where her mom set that expectation that everybody's basically our family or our neighbors, and so she had that programmed into her from an early age. So you started out with that, you gave us an example in the early on, then your whole life story basically showed that, and you brought it home at the end. So I enjoyed the speech a lot, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Thank you, Phil. For those of you looking in from home, we tend to use the sandwich method when we give evaluations, which is to start out with something positive, then give the meat, which is the area for improvement, and then finish off with the other piece of bread, which is the other positive piece of feedback. We're now going to go on to our third speech and do a different type of evaluation format than we typically do, which is the round robin feedback, because Bill is practicing his competition speech, and I think we've all have heard this before, but now it's a great opportunity to see how he has continued to evolve and make improvements so that he's going to be championship worthy when he competes at the next level. So I'm going to ask each of the members of the audience today to come forward to the lectern and provide a piece of feedback to Phil. So I'm going to start in the back corner with Sean. We'll go Sean, Carol, Suzanne, Veronica, and then I will finish off.
We're coming up.
Sean, would you please come up and provide feedback to Phil's speech?
Madam General
Why?
Phil, I was pretty amazed, because I've seen that speech several times, as have people in this club, that since the last time that I saw it, the wholesale changes are numerous and improving. And I'll just give you a couple, because I know that I want to leave room for other people to touch on some of the points. One of the things that really touched me was talking about your sons, specifically as you're driving, looking through the mirror, youngest, middle, and oldest, and their expression based on what you're doing at that moment, and then bring that back around when you saw them in Grand Central Station, I think, and looking at their expression, youngest, middle, oldest. That was powerful. That was a very great change, in my opinion. Another one I want to point out was the beginning. Tom Cruise and the whole cool thing, we've done that several times, but that you stopped and you asked specifically Toastmaster of the day and fellow Toastmasters, what do you think? So you brought us in right away. Not just, hey, what do you think, Tom Cruise? You specifically called us all out. So that was a really great change. Something I think, as a suggestion, might add to your speech. If you took and you gave information about the space between your eye and the lens, but did it in a very exaggerated fashion, you move very quickly and strongly to the side, and maybe give this side view and more of an inside view of what you're talking about, and display it that way as a side view, that might even open it up a little bit more. That's about the only suggestion I've got for your speech. I think you can change, and I don't want to take up other people's points. So, Madam General Evaluator, back to you.
Thank you, Sean.
Great speech.
Carol, would you like to please come up and give Sean or Phil some feedback? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator. Phil, I've heard this speech several times also, 4 or 5 times. The one thing that I noticed that's different, when you got to the point of, about midway where you said why you're on the trip, it was almost as if that was the ending, and then you started on about the Grand Central Station going down in the cave. So I thought he had 2 endings. That sounded like that was the ending, but I knew it wasn't. So that was the only thing that I have to say.
Thank you, Carol. Suzanne, will you please come up?
Thank you. I too have heard this speech several times before, and I have to say today was my favorite one of all. I think it was very powerful. You were putting a lot of energy into it, and I could really feel that. And what I really liked, that expression when you were talking about a shoulder short of being a pirate. I don't remember hearing that before. Yeah, and I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. It's funny, and it puts me right there that you are this cursing guy. And I know we're not supposed to repeat things that somebody else said before, but I want to point out the 2 things. The 2 times you were talking about your son's facial expressions, man, that is really awesome. That makes it so powerful to, like, right there, you can feel what the children felt and how you felt after you saw their faces. I think that was pretty great. And yeah, great emphasis on your words, and it was really good. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. And Veronica, will you please come forward? She's timing herself. I guess it means she's going to give a long one.
Sean, I really liked your use of gestures. Sorry, Phil. Excuse me, Phil. No, I'm not thinking. I will say that obviously this speech is world class. I mean, it's a winner. So what I'm giving you is just to make it even better, or just one opinion on one possible thing that you can do. I did go to Ladies in the Champs training, and at one point they said the following, an option to do conversations. Now I recognize that when you were talking to your wife, you were driving and she was over here. So this, you could play with it or not play with it. But what they had said is, if you're here and you're driving, this would be your wife and this would be you. So that way you don't have to physically move, but it's an easy way to differentiate between 2 people. Towards the end of the speech, you said, you might get mad, you might get angry. I immediately heard that as repetitive or redundant. So I thought, if you were to say, you might get frustrated, you might get angry, or you might get frustrated, you might get mad, or something like that, where and you could even use a third, where you might get frustrated, you might get angry, you might get sad, or something along the lines. It would be another emotion that might be appropriate. Sad doesn't seem quite, but that way you could pull in the rule of 3 as well. The final one that I thought of, you gestured at the end, very end of the speech, you gestured Mammoth Cave. Like Mammoth Cave was way the end of the day before you said that it was a 10. The day was a 10. And you said Mammoth Cave. I thought that you might say something like Mammoth Cave.
Good.
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator.
Thank you, Veronica. So this is the second time I've heard the speech, and yes, I noticed a lot of changes. I think you're doing a great job of continually evolving. The only thing that I could think of, and I'm getting picky, was for some reason when you referenced getting stung over here, you said your kids were off to the side. In my mind, I thought it was 2 kids. And then you were talking about your 3 boys, I think maybe if you just said my 3 boys over there versus, because then I was like, his kids could be a girl and a boy, and then I realized later on it's 3 boys. So that would be the only thing that I could pick out of that. I think we'll conclude this part of the round robin. We'll now go ahead and ask our grammarian to come forward and give her feedback.
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator. We had some great uses of the words of the day using rhetorical devices or figures of speech. We had some similes. Phil said that cereal was like a health food. Yeah. And with Susan, your Austrian accent is music to my ears. It's delightful. And Suzanne, you said the meeting, Heinrich was like Christmas, New Year's, and I didn't hear the third thing. I didn't write the third thing that you said. And that stories of Heinrich were like flying high after, and I didn't get whatever you said that was flying high, like after what?
After I went, I don't know, I just pulled that out of the air.
After what?
Yeah, feeling like I was in seventh heaven.
Seventh heaven, okay.
It just came to me.
Seventh heaven, okay. And then Sean said when he saw the timing lights flashing, it was like his life was flashing before his eyes. And Phil was like a pirate. And the reason that you noticed the pirate more this time is because he actually made the body language, which you didn't do before. I forgot to mention that I really like that because that made it more. For a metaphor stating one thing is another, Phil said, Sean, you're a tiger. And powerful words like slums. I don't remember who said that, but somebody said that. You also said that was Phil also. I did hear several so's when Suzanne was speaking. She used so's about 10 times as connectors, and you also use it as you had so much fun doing this or that. So you also used it as an adjective, and you used it as a connector when it could have been a pause or something. That was all that I had for my words of the day here. I didn't hear a lot of ums, ahs, and other killer filler words. Madam General Evaluator.
Thank you, Carol. What an interesting word of the day. It makes you actually think quite a bit, and unfortunately I didn't use it, and I'm trying to think of a way I could use it right now, and it's not coming to me. So I'm just going to ask our timer to come over and speak.
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator. Our table topics were a little bit different today, and because they were different today, we were getting thumbs up and okays from our table topics master, and that indicated that the person was done, instead of allowing them to continue to talk, which is actually fine. I loved it. I thought this approach was a lot of fun. Mine was 1 minute and 24 seconds. Carol's was 1 minute and 36 seconds. And Phil's was 1 minute and 33 seconds, those table topics. Suzanne, your speech was to be 5 to 7 minutes. You were 8 minutes and 19 seconds. And Sean, my sincere apologies. I was so enthralled by your speech that I forgot to watch the time. I immediately jumped into 5 to 7 minute mode, which is why you saw it go red. But then it went all the way back down to green because it was 7 minutes and 15 seconds. So now he was green. Or it was 8 minutes and a minute or whatever it was. So he went green, then it went back down to green, and then I progressed. But you handled it all so well. You even handled a heckler in the audience. I just thought you did a great job. You did a seriously great job. Phil, you were 6 minutes and 38 seconds, so you were well within the range, and I imagine you'll be going to get a lot more laughter when people hear your speech for the first time. So that's the only concern for our viewing audience. The contestants has 7 minutes and 30 seconds before they're disqualified. Their time should be 5 to 7 minutes, so that's the only thing that Phil has to watch. For evaluator number 1, Sean, your timing was 3 minutes and 55 seconds. You're going in the right direction. And for Phil as evaluator, you were 2 minutes and 51 seconds, so you were well within your time. Carol, in your evaluation of Phil, 34 seconds. Suzanne was 53 seconds. Sean, you were 1 minute and 43 seconds. I was 2 minutes and 28 seconds. And Michelle was 34 seconds. And so we didn't exactly have a time for that. Thank you, Madam General Evaluator.
And timer. So just a few comments for our evaluators today. Again, very seasoned and strong evaluators here today. So for Sean's evaluation of Suzanne, the one thing you mentioned actually about her opening, and I was going along the same path, except I was thinking that that was material that you could have given to the Toastmaster to present. So what we do in Toastmasters is write an introduction, and they can give any foreground or pre-info that you would like the audience to know so that you don't have to come up and give that information before you start your speech. So that was my suggestion, but you had a very similar type of approach on that. And Phil, for Sean's evaluation, you great feedback. The one thing I noticed you didn't mention, you're a ring fiddler.
Oh.
So you tend to, and I don't know if it's a nerve, because you don't ever seem nervous, but you're definitely a ring fiddler, and that's one of the things that could be distracting to some people that I noticed. That I do have to compliment you dealing with the laughing in the back, because I get the church giggles. It's contagious, right? And Veronica is known for getting the church giggles during Toastmasters, and you did a fantastic job. I know the one time you kind of turned around and I think you started to say, I'm not even going to look at her, so you did a really good job of recovering from Veronica's little episode back there. I do want to comment, everybody gave great feedback to Phil. I appreciate that everybody actually stood up and no one said pass, because very difficult to find critical feedback for you. Veronica, I think you did a really good job of giving him some solid tips, very seasoned, and I actually think you would be a fantastic evaluator in a future competition, so keep that in mind. At the meeting as a whole, I think we started on time, but we had a couple agenda items beforehand, but we laughed a lot at this meeting, and I think that to me is the most important thing. We all had fun. And so for those looking in at home, if you want to check us out and come laugh with us, please find out more about us at www.tvtoastmasters.com. I am now going to pass it back to the Toastmaster of the day.
Thank you for a great job, as usual, in your evaluations. I really like your evaluations. I do have one little business here that Phil Barth happened to win the contest at the division level at the International Speech Contest, and I do have his certificate. He left his Boy Scout camping trip, came and did this, and had to get back to give things out at the Boy Scout overnight trip. So I picked up his information for him, and this is the trophy for first place in the division and your certificate. And congratulations.
Thank you.
And I loved the meeting. I thought we did well. I'm glad. It was easier last night counting the rhetorical devices when all I had to do was do that and not worry about Toastmaster also. But we did a good job, and it was a lot of fun, and I like having fun at the meetings. Thank you, Madam General Evaluator.
I am standing in for our president today as VP of Education. I would like to say for our viewing audience, we have meetings twice monthly. Once on Saturday, which is the third Saturday of the month at 10 a.m., and the first Thursday at 6 p.m. We are at 7850 5 Mile Road in Cincinnati, but it is in the Anderson Community Center. Upstairs on Saturday and down in the TV studio on Thursday. I will say that the one really cool thing about our meetings, besides the fact that we're one of the few clubs that meets on Saturdays, any Saturday at all, but the second thing is also that we videotape our shows and we put them out on YouTube and also on the local television stations. It's very helpful. If you want to get the word out about your business, about anything you're very passionate about, if you have a practice presentation you need to give for work, you can come in and practice your speech and get a chance to watch it afterwards. I highly recommend the club. We have a lot of fun. Thank you very much for joining us. This meeting is adjourned.